This is the Picard podcast on TV Podcast Industries. We're talking about Star Trek Picard, Season 3, Episode 4, No-Win Scenario.
It's a wonderful idea, Jean-Luc, but in a moment, 100 things could go wrong. I cannot choose certain death.
Deanna would say it's about trust. Look where we are. Here, all of us, in this moment. So let's do what we spent our entire lives learning to be great at.
We've been here before, Will. If this is the end, let's face it together, doing what we know we do best.
Welcome back, fellow Trekkies and Trekkers. This is TV Podcast Industries. We are back talking about Star Trek Picard, Season 3, Episode 4, No-Win Scenario. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hello there, fellow Trekkies. I am your Blobbin of Oz, John.
Oh, damn. I was going to go for that too.
Wow.
I am Chris. Damn, we're in sync.
You could be a blob sort of trying to fit into the conduits.
Or I'm just a blob in a cup. How's that?
There we go.
Hang on a second. What you're saying here is I'm surrounded by changelings.
Maybe.
Probably.
Uh-oh. I might have to ask you a question and see if you know the answer to it.
I will not know the answer.
Yeah,
Okay.
neither will I.
Oh, there we go. Now I know you're not changelings. You would have pretended you did know the answers. But welcome back, fellow Trekkies and Trekkers. Looking forward to chatting about this episode. This was a really good episode of Picard.
It really was, yeah.
I really
enjoyed
felt
it.
like old Next Generation, didn't it?
It did a bit, certainly with old space jellyfish. Although I was thinking they were calamari at some point. I think they had suckers on them.
I don't think they were exactly like jellyfish
No.
in space,
No,
so
they
they
were-
are allowed to design them slightly
Yeah,
differently.
a unique thing.
Yes.
Riding the wave.
Exactly.
Yes, very oceanic.
This was great. This for me felt very much like OG Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
Like it ticked all the boxes. They boldly go where no one's gone before. they
Literally.
seeked out new life.
They literally.
Yeah.
Like it was like, what's the checklist for a good Star Trek episode? check, done, cool, let's go.
Absolutely.
They threw an asteroid at a ship. I was
Awesome.
like, come on.
Yeah. And
This is
they
great.
even referenced probably everybody's favorite episodes of each of the series, I think, as they went through in conversation or in background. So yeah, lots of great stuff in this episode. But thanks once again for joining us. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, you can subscribe to the podcast by popping over to our website at tvpodcastindustries.com. You can find a way to subscribe to any of our versions of the podcast. We have one specifically for Picard. And we also have our main feed, which covers everything that we're talking about on the podcast, including The Last of Us, Season 1, which finishes next week.
I know.
And that other science fiction fantasy show set in a galaxy far, far away. We're talking about Star Wars, The Bad Batch, not The Mandalorian. the Bad Batch. Yes. So lots and lots of stuff going on at the moment in TV Podcast Industries. So subscribe over there. We also want to hear your thoughts as the rest of the series goes on Star Trek Picard. You can email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com or pop on over to our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries, where you can go on to one of our spoiler posts and share your thoughts on any of the episodes we're covering.
Yes, good stuff. Let us get into our spoiler-filled discussion, though, of Episode 4, No-Win Scenario. Derek, what are some of the episode details?
One I keep forgetting to include each week. The show is created by Akiva Goldsman, Michael Chabon, Christian Bale, and Alex Kurtzman as well. But the series producer, of course, is Terry Matalas, who wrote this episode along with Sean Tretta. This is the fourth episode, I think, that Sean Tretta has written. He wrote episode 2 of this season 2 and will write episode 9 of the season.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
So yeah, so all heavily involved. As we mentioned, this is a big family behind the scenes as well as in front of the scenes. So lots of writers that are coming back on board for each episode. Once again, directed by the wonderful number one himself, Jonathan Frakes.
Captain, I think you'll find.
Yes, he's captain, of course, at the moment. But there has been some great behind the scenes interviews and behind the scenes material released this week of Jonathan Frakes directing on this season of Picard. It's been really interesting to watch. He's been comparing what it was like directing back in the day on Next Generation, where they put like a mark on the wall and that's supposed to represent an alien that will be replaced later. And now with all the advances in technology, it's almost like working live. So yeah, some great stuff. Go check that out. John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for Star Trek Picard Season 3, Episode 4, No Win Scenario?
Sure. Having damaged the USS Titan, Vadik reveals a new form of long-distance communications as she removes an arm to contact her superior. Ouch. She is told to pursue the Titan at all costs, but her powerful portal gun will be destroyed along with her entire crew when they re-enter the nebula. Wisely choosing not to fail her mission, she dumps the unwieldy portal technology and continues her cat-and-mouse game. But the Titan is too damaged to run both propulsion and life support for more than a few hours. Riker admits Picard was right about attacking Vadik earlier, but as all seems lost, he suggests that John Luke spends his last moments bonding with his newfound son, Jack. Picard takes Jack to the 10 Forward program on the holodeck, a program powered separately from all systems to allow crew members a place to go when under extreme circumstances like these. Picard and Jack tell each other some of their adventures, but are joined by Shaw, who bitterly recounts his experiences as an engineer during Starfleet's battle with the Borg at Wolf 359. He reveals he blames Picard for the deaths that day while he was part of the Borg collective. However, the anomaly starts discharging energy pulses, and Beverly monitors the timing and proposes that the anomaly is actually a space creature about to give birth. Riker, Beverly, Jack, and Picard form a highly risky plan to harness the energy pulses for recharging the ship's systems and ride them out of the nebula. But with the changeling saboteur still on board, they enlist Shaw and Seven's help. They work together to find and kill the changeling imposter. Their plan works, and as the Titan utilizes the anomaly's energy pulses, passing Vadik's ship, that Riker then destroys using its tractor beam to fling an asteroid at the Shrike, dealing it great damage. The crew of the Starfleet vessel escapes the nebula amid the newborn jellyfish-like space creatures.
They definitely destroyed a few with the warp as they warped off. It was just like splash, 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 splash.
They should just put nets behind them and it's kind of like space fishing.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
And have nice calamari.
I think they've grown beyond that.
Yes, they just replicates.
Exactly, yeah. Maybe they could just feed it into the menu in the replicator instead.
If I was Jean-Luc, it would be calamari deep fried.
Wow. Okay.
I like calamari. Tend not to eat them.
Warp singed.
Singed.
Yeah, warp singed.
Oh,
just
yeah,
char grilled.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. Okay.
Space barbecue to go with the space surfing.
Oh, clearly we're all very hungry tonight as we've started recording the episode. So we will move on with our major moments from the episode. Let's get into our first moment, our minor moment of the episode.
Make it so, number one.
So this is usually a kind of a quote or a moment that stood out to you, a small moment that stood out to you. Chris, do you want to kick us off with your first moment?
100%. So, the second we watch this, I message you guys when you're finished, please let me know. I want to tell you my favorite quote of this whole episode. And there's a few good ones in there,
really
Derek did point out, but there's just one golden one that encapsulates Shaw, that encapsulates a scene, and just kind of a lot of, I felt like I could use this in my everyday life. But that quote is, forgive me, at some point, a-hole became a substitute for charm.
Nice.
Oh, just, it encapsulates his character, where he is, that moment. It encapsulates that he was charming at some point, because you know it is there. Todd Stashwick delivers it amazingly.
Absolutely.
And it's just like, you're like, I could use that in my everyday life and it will sound amazing.
Yeah.
You're not an a-hole, Chris.
Ah, thank you. But I can be. It's when I turn the charm on.
I was wondering whether
being ironic.
Oh, thanks.
No, I wasn't.
Thanks.
I was wondering whether John was practicing his changeling there. No,
Yeah,
sorry,
exactly.
Chris. Only joking. Of
Hey,
course.
look, at least I can substitute it. That's the only thing.
Hey,
It's the
I
thing.
like it.
Other people can't.
I like it. And John, how about yourself? What's your favorite line from the episode?
Mine's kind of another sure one, but it's the pitter-patter with Seven of Nine as she kind of goes to enlist his help to find the changeling saboteur on board. So it's kind of a string of quotes here. I mean, I did kind of like just Shaw's, he's telling Seven of Nine to find them. You really need to ask them a question that you know the answer to, and see if they get it wrong. And it just goes, simple question, wrong answer, boom, changeling. But it's then how he kind of then moves that off after some more conversation with her and goes, look, we got off on the wrong foot. I underestimated you. You have great instincts, are loyal. You're a natural leader. You'll be a great captain one day, is what I would say. And then Seven of Nine finishes, if you were a changeling and not just a dick. I just thought it was really, really good. Because in that first instance, I thought, oh, this is kind of where, there's
Finally
the Shaw
coming
Seven of
together.
Nine kind of
Right.
love, and he's finally, giving her respect. And it's just, I love the turn and I love the response of Seven of Nine here. This was really, really good. Seeing these two, together actually in this episode as well.
Absolutely. Some great moments, between them all. And Shaw is such a great character in this show. I think we could probably have picked, another 5 lines, from Shaw from this episode. It has great moments.
Definitely.
Excellent stuff.
Derek, what about yourself?
There were some great funny lines, as you pointed out, but there is one line in the episode or one moment in the episode that kind of encapsulates all of Star Trek for me and why I love Star Trek, really. And it's the moment where Picard's kind of reminiscing with the young ensigns who are
This is the 5
questioning him
years
the 5 years
before.
earlier. Yeah, and 10 forward. Getting a lot of use out of that set, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I liked about it.
They built it for last season and they're using it this season. But when he's unable to eat his dinner because they're asking him so many questions, there is a great moment where he kind of recants something he'd said previously. He's kind of talking about no-win scenarios before, but they're all a bit worried because he's had so many adventures, and they're all worried that if they get themselves into those situations, how would they deal with it effectively? And Picard gives them the piece of advice, which is the fundamental part of Star Trek, really, to me, which is, he says to them, there will be a time where you have to remember that no matter how bleak or unwinnable a situation, as long as you and your crew remain steadfast in your dedication one to another, you are never ever without hope. And it just sounds so Picard. It sounds so Star Trek. It's the fundamental that it's based on all the crew working together.
Yeah.
I do love the cut because they are showing that it might look like this is a no-win situation, but we're right at the start of the episode. Picard's giving this speech to some people. Don't worry, they're going to get out of this at the end, all by working together is the whole point. But I do like that. It might be hopeless, but there is always hope in the background. So yeah, great moment for me.
Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah, it is. It's a great line. It felt really Jean-Luc. I the sentiment of it is just so fine, really. So yeah, great quote.
Excellent stuff. Will we go on to our medium moments from the episode?
Yeah.
Implement the Omega Directive immediately.
So our Omega Directive, our medium moment from the episode. Who wants to kick us off first on this one? John?
Yep, I'll take my medium moment. It's really where Seven of Nine and Shaw are working together to get the Titan ready for this, outlandish plan that has been put together, to draw the energy from the pulsating anomaly, or space creature, in order to fire up the engines and get their life support back, online. So I just really like that. I mean, I mentioned the quote in Shaw's quarters, and that's kind of part of it, really. But it is also just, as they're there working on it, it ultimately forms the plan for Seven of Nine and Shaw to draw out this changeling, this imposter, and this wolf in sheep's clothing, in a sense. And we see earlier,
not wolf in sheep's clothing.
No,
wolf.
we see earlier Seven of Nine taking Shaw's advice and looking for this vase. Where, the blob the blob substance of the changelings need to rest, part of them, so that they can regenerate. This thing as well that Worf also mentioned about them being away from the Great Link, for an extended period of time, and her having to take out one of the officers, or the changeling, who then manages to squirm his way through the conduits.
Yeah, so it's effectively they can't keep their shape for too long. They have to fall down into their.
They have to relax.
Yeah.
Effectively.
It's like,
I guess. Yeah, it's like tensing a muscle for too long.
It's like
otherwise they'll get cramps.
Yeah.
But they leave residue everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. I like the residue joke. I must say, the version of the changeling as it collapses to the ground and oozes out, I think that looks so cool. Obviously, they were very heavily featured in Deep Space Nine, and the CGI at the time wasn't as good, of course. So it always just looked like a slightly beige liquid. Was pretty much what it is.
A bad puddle, essentially.
Yeah, you kind of, but they had a kind of a glow to it. They did everything they could at the time, but now you can almost see muscles in it. You can almost see, the features of whatever form it had taken, melting away within that ooze. I think it looks really cool. It looks much more creepy and evil looking in this form than it used to in the past.
Yeah. No, it looks really good.
I didn't understand why phasers can cut as well.
Mm-hmm.
So why she just didn't cut and push it almost just hey, I'm going to slice off this part of the blob as it runs away. Didn't they used to do that on one or two of the phasers?
Well, maybe they did. Yeah. I think maybe they have to change the setting, and she was trying to fight back quickly, maybe.
She was trying to shoot versus cut.
Yes, exactly.
It's that whole knife to a gunfight.
That old chestnut, exactly.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I mean, I liked how ultimately you have throughout this episode 7 and 9 working with Shaw, and it coming to a head where he's using his previous engineering experience in order to get the hyperdrive wings open so that they can charge up. But it is also to draw out the changeling. Yeah. Set that trap, because they will do everything they can to prevent the Titan from leaving.
Exactly.
And so I just thought it was good though, because it was nice and tense in that moment, because you've got 2 minutes to get both of them open and all that, and then you have Ensign LaForge coming down, and again 7 of 9 using Shaw's advice. And she uses Commander Hansen instead of Commander 7. Yeah. And so as a result, we have LaForge. But I was kind of wondering, because it is teed up quite clearly. Stay up we don't need any help. Mm-hmm. And then you have LaForge, and I'm going, okay, that'll be really interesting.
Yeah, LaForge is a bridge officer, but as she walks in, she does kind of say, that really weird moment where she goes, but my father is a really big engineer as well. Of course I'm going to come down and help you for this. And you're kind of going, yeah, I guess you'd say something like that if you were the real LaForge. But
I guess so.
It seems odd to walk into every room and introduce yourself as the daughter of the great engineer, Geordie LaForge. These people know you. They're your shipmates, right?
That's it. I think the other thing for me, it just clarified that changelings don't have to kill the person that they're replicating.
Yes. Yeah.
They don't have to.
Exactly,
you can understand for the transporter ensign, because the guy's going to be on there for the full duration. Mm-hmm. And so having, the changeling would have to keep adjusting and being other people. And, there could be that really awkward moment, a bit like in Terminator 2, where suddenly you're face to face with yourself.
Yes, exactly.
So, that was a good clarification.
It was
for myself.
And another really interesting one that might have escaped your notice when Seven is explaining about the Changeling being on board. She says the Changeling was on board 4 or 5 days before they went to pick up Jack. So in other words, the Changeling is not there to get Jack Crusher. The Changeling is just aboard this vessel and is kind of enacted upon, I guess, is told he now has to do whatever he can do to sabotage the ship so they can get Jack Crusher. So it's not the mission of the Changeling aboard this ship, it seems, to get Jack Crusher, because they never knew the Titan was going anywhere near Jack Crusher. This is just an infiltration of this Changeling, which I thought was really interesting. So they could be everywhere.
I think that's what we're going to get in the next couple of episodes, which is like, trust no one, trust everyone, trust no one. They walk among us.
Exactly.
Basically, they live.
Well, as we said last week, it's secret invasion in space, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I just, that's my museum moment. In some ways, it stretches across all of the episodes with Seven of Nine and Shaw, to some degree, begrudgingly working together, but the teamwork coming in here from Shaw, and so I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, me too. I think I'm trying to think of the line. It was something that I really enjoyed from Shaw, where he was kind of going, "Oh, let me guess, you need someone to hotwire the nacelles, and nobody knows how to do that but me." I just kind of like the idea of hotwiring the nacelles, as if it's some kind of hot rod. Very cool. Very cool. How about yourself, Chris? What's your medium moment from the episode?
I'm actually going to take the space jellyfish.
Do it.
I'm going to take that. The fun part of the seek out new life forms part of Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
I always enjoy this part where it's like they let the writers' kind of creativity and imagination go wild. And kind of like, hey, anywhere in space, there are all these weird things. Do you know what? Maybe a nebula is a big jellyfish, and in order for it to essentially give birth to its spawn and offspring, it has to collapse on itself and expel all of these jellyfish, its offspring. Yeah. And I was like, once you start getting into it, I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Like giving off energy. It's a contraction. And then at that end, seeing that beautiful sight of all of the space jellyfish, whatever we're going to call them.
Getting run over by the Titan.
Yeah, squish. It has those windows wipers.
Exactly.
It's just like
destroy a beautiful moment with John Harrison. There we go.
But that's why I love him. But that's the fun part of it. Like it's just seeing the what if of space, of species, of the fun part of seeking new life forms. And it looked beautiful. So over the years, Star Trek has had many kind of iterations, and as the years go by, special effects get better and better. And this is one of the most beautiful. Like I have, if anyone knows, I have Philips Hue around my basically a Hue strip which syncs to my TV, so the lights kind of dispel out onto my wall based on where they are on the screen on the TV. So what we end up getting here, I have lights and other places. So I had this cinema strobe of the lights kind of going in sync with basically when the screen was going back to the inside of the dark inside of the Titan, and then outside to the beautiful kind of opulence of these space jellyfish kind of with their fluorescent. That's cool. And it was like, that's what you want. Like, that's why I enjoy watching Avatar. I love this type of, do you know what? Take me on a journey of imagination.
Exactly.
Well, and that was just perfect.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. It's like with the dark drive in Discovery, but also with the tardigrades, and that, this idea of things being able to survive, live, breed in space. But it is, there's a fantastical element to it here, with the space jellyfish or slash calamari. And it's really good because sometimes, things are played just, possibly too straight. It depends on what the story is, what the show is. And, Star Trek's always had that great ability to come up with completely, I mean, sometimes it doesn't always work, but like nutty new life that's been discovered. And like you say, Chris, it's part of the mission. It's part of their vision, and it's good to have that in the show.
Well, exactly, and that's probably the most interesting thing. The complaint about Star Trek is that it's gotten away from its roots quite a lot, because it tends to be an adventure show much more than an exploratory show and a science fiction show at sometimes. If you think about how many years we've been past, the shows that used to be 26, 27 episodes where they were discovering new life in the universe, we're now at the stage where they're telling 8-episode arcs, 10-episode arcs, or just a movie. Those are action adventure orientated and usually feature creatures and characters we've met before, because, it's a great way, put an antagonist in there, put a Romulan in there, put a Klingon in there, grand, then they all have a battle, and that's the end of the episode kind of thing. Whereas being able to put in, even though this is only a 10-episode series, being able to put in a brand new species and show something brand new in a galaxy, in a universe that's filled with things we haven't discovered, really speaks to the origins of the show. I think that's really cool.
And Farpoint, Encounter at Farpoint.
Yeah.
Literally the origins of the Next Generation had an entity, jellyfish, go back to space at the end of the part 2. Like, that was, and okay, yes, we had Q, but that's a separate kind of bit, but we already dealt with Q last season.
We did.
So this again reminded me of just what I was like, oh my god, this, what drew me in very much in the very first episode of Next Generation. So yeah, that is my point. The seeking out new life forms.
Excellent. One other thing I really like about this scene and this concept is that it's all because of Dr. Beverly Crusher on board. It's a doctor using her abilities in space to identify this new creature and this new species. They would not have known it unless Beverly Crusher was using all of her instincts, doing what she does best, effectively.
And it was a nice little moment because you see her counting down and then the pulse coming, and you're like going, "Oh, had she encountered this particular species before in her travels with Jack?" But she's in the medical bay. Yeah. There's no outside windows. It's simply that timing in terms of the contractions of this space creature. So it was really good.
Yeah.
Loved it. And I think, it's to the point. There were a lot of really good, I want to say old school moments here. It was just those elements that, we've seen across the history of Star Trek coming in and, making it really feel Trekky. So it was great. Derek, what about your medium moment?
I'm going to go to Vadic for my medium moment. Just because I just thought it was a really shocking moment. As we were kind of talking about it last week. We weren't really too sure about who Vadic is. We were still trying to work out what her connection is with this crew, with Jack, with Picard, with the Titan. What is it, So here I guess it's confirmed she's a changeling, right? I guess that's the confirmation here. But it's a weird way to use her as a changeling, as she cuts off her arm and creates this communication method to her boss, as it, transforms into the face of Bo, or the face of her boss, sorry. And they start talking to her through her own hand, effectively. It's a really interesting, moment. We're effectively hearing from Vadic that, as far as she's concerned, they've destroyed the ship. I'm really sorry. Jack was on board that ship. I know you wanted him, but sorry, they're probably going to be dead now. And, being told, no, you have to pursue. You have to get that asset back. That is what we have you doing here. So Jack is the most important thing here. And they're willing to sacrifice not only Vadic, but the crew and the ship, the Shrike, in order to get it. So, always really good in a show where you have a villain for a few episodes and then find out they have a boss that they're scared of, right? And so scared that she ditches the massively powerful weapon, the portal weapon that she's been using, and that obviously took a lot for them to get. Just ditches it so that she can fulfill the mission that she's been told she has to fulfill.
Yeah, exactly. I did like the fact that the portal technology had Daystrom labelled on it as it was ditched. I thought that was a good little touch.
I had to rewind that about 3 times.
Well, exactly.
You could see some writing on it and you were going, I bet you that says Daystrom.
Yeah.
Just need to rewind it just confirm it. Yeah.
But I think as well, just this form of communication was just really good. And again, just the way it was done, I guess that is her boss in terms of their true form, because the form is coming through as a changeling. It'll be interesting to see what, form is taken by this superior if they have to, go into a particular situation.
Well, exactly. Yeah.
But it was really cool. Shocking, because I just thought she was going to cut something. It felt like a sacrificial type bowl or something, rather than having this conversation. So I thought it was pretty cool. It was a nice sort of touch here, and I'm guessing that they can communicate possibly because Vadik has been closer to the Great Link. It's to do with that Great Link, possibly between changelings.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, as a form of communication, that's special.
It is very special, definitely. It is very special.
Quite special.
Just a reminder, one of the things that we heard earlier on in the season, that these are a faction of changelings. This isn't the changelings that were in the battle against the Federation. This is a group that is split off from the changelings who don't agree what happened. So the Great Link, I think, is where all the changelings live, and this is another group who have their own link, I guess.
Okay, but I just wondered...
it's kind of the less than Great Link.
I just wondered... They can utilize that in order to have those communications. And also just because of the flashes and the voices that Jack was hearing right at the end, So is he an undercover changeling, that
doesn't know he's a changeling?
Doesn't know he's a changeling in order to, that's why they're after him or something, or it's just because of that connection that he had when you hear the voices of, I'm guessing, this superior, but also it sounded like Vadik as well, saying, find me together soon. So again,
absolutely,
this idea of a collectiveness about the changelings.
Yeah.
I think, so that was one thing that I was going to raise later. Very interested to see where this goes. Is it because Jack would have had to have changed back by this point if he was a changeling?
Yeah.
So is it more like he's a changeling savior? He's their Jesus Christ kind of figure, and he's going to bring in a new future, blah, 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 something with the Great Link.
Right.
Who knows? Or did Crusher fall into the ooze when she was at that planet, and then part of it mixed with her DNA and Picard's DNA, and that's something weird, because that ending was like, okay, I'm seeing what?
Yeah.
It was just it's apocalypse. Yeah. What's going on? I really I know why they're doing it that way, but it was just okay, we finished arc 1 of this season.
Yep.
That's enough to set you into arc 2.
Exactly. And let's give you a nice cliffhanger to come back next week. Yeah.
The one thing I was going to say just on Vadik's boss is, now that he's a changeling, or she's a changeling, or they're a changeling, it allows us very quickly to get one-off, very quick cameos by previous Next Gen or kind of stars in the inevitable face-off with Picard.
Maybe.
So you could literally have them facing off together, talking to each other, and at one moment they become X person, or the time after they become another well-known person from Next Generation, and another scene, and then you get that fan service, but at the same point, they don't need to be back for a whole season.
Absolutely.
They're back for a split episode.
Yeah, you have a great way to bring in Tom Hardy if you want to get a cameo from one of the biggest actors in the world.
Yeah, exactly.
You go,
who would probably do it, because seemingly he enjoyed that time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I love the idea. That's why changes are cool in this universe.
Yep, very much so.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'm going to throw this in here because I can't think of anywhere else to put it. But the final moments of Vadic as well, from the episode where we have the cool moment with Riker throwing the meteor through the Shrike to take it out, and it doesn't seem to be destroyed. But just before it, we have Vadic giving this amazing line of, "If you open the jaw wide enough, and eventually the prey runs right into the mouth of the beast." I just love that because, again, we're talking about this predator and prey. Yeah. This is how the cat and mouse game that she likes to play, but it's a great line from her.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think the Shrike was pretty
damaged.
Disabled, like to the point where it could also be drawn then into the gravity well. So I'm wondering, will we be seeing Vadic again? To be honest, I'm not too sure given the final moments where you hear her voice. Yeah, but possibly, it seemed pretty terminal for the Shrike in that moment, given what all her crew were saying about, again, similar life support and all this beginning to fail
as
aboard
you know,
the
John,
Shrike.
if they all work together, keep their heads about them and trust each other, it's not all hopeless.
They don't do it on those kind of ships.
How do you know?
I don't know. I'm just assuming. It's only Starfleet where that happens.
If they are all changelings and they all merge together and create their own great link on board, maybe they can survive. You never know.
Yeah.
There you go.
Maybe.
Go. And give them some hope.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I like the fact that Riker effectively using from her playbook, from Vadic's playbook, when she flung Beverly's ship, the Elios, at the Titan.
Exactly. Yeah. He does that. He does that with the meteor.
Yeah. So pretty good.
Good stuff. That's the medium moments. I think we need to go into the big moments from the episode.
We must face the ramifications of the Prime Directive.
So, who wants to start with the big moment? I think we'll go back to John now.
Yeah, well, I think we need to face Jean-Luc Picard, the ramifications of you being the cutest of Borg, or the cutest of Borg. He will never get away from that transformation.
Absolutely.
And neither should he, because, I mean, it was fantastic for a start. Again, just touching the references of Picard becoming Locutus, but also then the Wolf 359 battle, where effectively Starfleet's armada to prevent the Borg from traveling to Earth to assimilate them all, with all of Jean-Luc Picard's assimilated into the Borg collective, fails pretty badly for Starfleet.
Yeah.
So I thought this was really a good sort of just putting in a fantastic aspects of the Next Generation, but here in this moment where, Shaw has been, distant at odds with Riker and Jean-Luc all this time, and including the Seven of Nine as, a loyal ally to Jean-Luc Picard. And we get to hear his drug-fueled tale of what happened on that day. He says he comes into 10 forward into the holographic, the holodeck. He does say, "Forgive me, your mother gives quite a lot of meds." Like he's kind of swimming around. So I like the fact that he tells his story of effectively his first meeting with Jean-Luc, and as he opens it to Jean-Luc saying, do you remember the time when we first met? And he starts to talk about the star date, and you see the recognition on Jean-Luc's face, and then Wolf 359, and that battle with the Borg, the 11,000 dead, but the personal story of they were following orders and they were at the escape pods or the escape chamber, but were just waiting there until a superior effectively and by chance pointed at Shaw along with two others to say, "You go.
Yeah.
You're the ones that will survive this." And he, blames Picard for what happened there, that trauma that he got from it in effectively being ordered to leave all his friends and shipmates, as he was ordered to effectively go to safety.
Well, exactly.
I just thought it was really, really good. I like how Shaw has always challenged these two in this series, in this season, I should say, so far. And it's also to the credit of Patrick Stewart, because Picard is shaken here. I understand. It's the thing he's got the trauma he's got to live with as well. But he understands this response of other Starfleet officers that may have been at that huge, disastrous battle for Starfleet. And,
absolutely.
He ultimately leaves here. And I mean, it's all as well coming off the back of trying to reclaim some memories with his son Jack in the holodeck as well. And, so it's just that counterpoint to it. I mean, it's not necessarily going particularly well with Jack either, but this just makes the whole situation even more awkward for Jean-Luc Picard, and in these final moments to try and get to know Jack as well. Yeah. So I found this really, really good. I really enjoyed just that being brought up. You can imagine Shaw in his last moments just wanting to get that off his chest as well.
And he's picking his moment. He's specifically saying it in front of Jack because Picard is trying to reconnect with his son. He's almost saying to him, hang on a second, do you know who this guy is? Just before he tells you all of the great deeds that he's done over the last couple of decades, he was Locutus of Borg. There was 11,000 people that died because of the knowledge that was in his brain. It's a really big moment there for Sean, and you're right, it is a moment that he has to get it off his chest. But this is something that Picard has had to put up with and had to deal with since that moment. I think the biggest example of that is probably, once again, another DS9 connection, is Captain Sisko, because he lost his wife during Wolf 359, so leaving him a single parent effectively. And he always had a problem with Picard. We saw that the first time they were ever met each other. He always had a problem with Picard because of that. So nice to kind of have another callback to Deep Space Nine as well here.
Yeah, definitely.
And the interesting thing is, a lot of this week has been news reports of kind of certain character or certain actors saying, "Oh, I'm back, I'm not back, or I may be back," kind of thing. So, like, you have Chakotay who's saying he's not back at all. They approached him, he decided against.
Oh, okay, I'm surprised they even approached.
But you have Sisko saying no comment.
Right.
So there is chances of like this whole Picard being Locutus still thing that might continue on in this season, which I'm finding really interesting, because I thought it was a one-off. But now that he is synthetic, I think they may be doing this whole thing of, as great as we all see Admiral Picard as being, there was this period of time where he destroyed millions of lives, thousands of lives. Unbeknownst to him, he was Locutus, but he wasn't. He was still Picard in a way, because he came back from it. Yeah. So a lot of people harbor basically xenophobia towards the Borg, as well as essentially hatred towards Picard.
Exactly.
So basically, I think they may be kind of playing on the, remember how great Picard is? Well, not everyone thinks that.
Well, exactly. Yeah.
So,
and Shaw is totally embodying that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think Sisko might be back for part of that as well.
I know all of us DS9 fans absolutely hope we would get to see Benjamin Sisko one more time, just at least to explain what happened and what's happened to him since the end of Deep Space Nine.
But, he's a changeling.
No. We don't want to see a changeling version of it. We'd like to see the actor back in the role, and like to see what happened to Benjamin Sisko. But my understanding is that Avery Brooks has a very complicated history with Star Trek, and when he finished his final day on set, kind of said that's that's it for me.
Oh, okay. So then maybe he's just
moving on. But you never know. It's been quite a few decades now, and maybe the last opportunity with a really good story, maybe it'll draw him back on board.
So he can come back as a changeling. Then he's not Sisko.
Yeah, but I mean, the actor is the one that has the challenge, not the character. I think the character can be written into the show.
Yeah.
But maybe not played by Avery Brooks. But you feel like they've given this story to Shaw so that they can use a story they may have used with Sisko. But anyway, you're totally right. I'd love to have them back. John, is that it for your major moment?
Yes.
Chris, how about yourself? What's your major moment from the episode?
Cowabunga, dude, let's ride away.
You're still happy after the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles trailer this week,
exactly.
Chris?
Definitely, 100%. Well, that's a whole other podcast. Yeah. This for me was fun. This was, again, I know they built the whole wider story of this episode around forming the crew coming together, believing in everyone's role and knowledge and everything like that.
Loved it.
But for me, it was, very next generation of how they got out of this. Like, opening the sail ports, and they're going to pull the energy in, and we're going to ride this wave. We're going to, like, low jacket, which is very Riker. It's part of Picard, that they took the science officer. Like, the only bit they were missing, which was Geordi going, yes, I can do this kind of thing. Yeah. But they'll obviously have that later on. And I found it fun. It just brought fun back to this season so far, like this episode. I was just like, yeah, this is old school Star Trek. It's just like they're in a predicament. They're gonna figure out a way to get out of it.
Absolutely, not just a predicament, Chris. A no-win scenario.
Yes,
the episode.
Yes, exactly.
It's right there.
But technically, it's an oxymoron because they do win
exactly,
and they get out of it.
Yeah. There's no such thing in Star Trek as a no-win scenario. We found that with
there's the Kobayashi Maru.
Exactly, which is exactly the way that Kirk turned that on his head led to his legend, right? It's supposed to be a no-win scenario, and he found a way out of it. So,
and it's to your quote to begin with, which is, if your crew are together, you are never without hope. Effectively, I think it was really fun. Outrageous, but really good fun. But not only that, it has that link to that quote. It has where Beverly says, in terms of the plan to ride the waves, the doubt there. She's like, well, let's do what we've spent our lives being great at doing, I just thought it was really good. And of course, you have Picard back in the captain's chair and engage.
Exactly.
Like, it's just phenomenally, brilliant.
Oh, they are hitting the nostalgia button so well this season.
Loved it.
Yes, loving it. Really, really enjoyed those moments. Good stuff, Chris. Anything else on that, Chris?
Nope, that was it. Derek, what about yourself? What was your kind of prime directive on this one?
I went really sad for my prime directive moment, my final moment. I guess we just have to cover all the points in the episode, so I'm left to talk about the moment where Picard is in front of all of the young ensigns 5 years ago, and we find out that actually Jack did pay him a visit. Throughout the episode, we've seen him try to reconnect with Jack, or try to have some connection with Jack, not even reconnect because he never knew him before, but we hear Jack kind of going, I'm fine. I'm alone. I live my life alone. I'm fine with never having anybody else around me. And Picard saying to him, but I think I need this before it all ends. I think I'm the one that needs to create this connection with you. But we find out that there was a point that Jack did try to reach out to Picard. We had heard before that Beverly had told him about Jean-Luc, but didn't know what happened with that. And here we see that Jack was there at the moment when Picard was talking to the ensigns within Starfleet as an older man, as a retired man, giving out advice to all of these young startups, and they ask him the question as to why he never had a family. Did he find it difficult? And he says, well, Starfleet was his family. He didn't need anything more than that. Unbeknownst to him, his son is in the room about to reconnect with him, and Jack decides, well, if he doesn't want a family, I'm not going to reconnect with him, and leaves So there was a point that Jack did reach out to him,
Yeah.
which we did wonder about last week. How could they go that many years without reaching out? Beverly did leave it to Jack to make that decision and had heard that Jack didn't.
Well, he didn't reach out to him. He spied on him, effectively. Like, he kind of cased the joint, really, to see whether he wanted Picard as his father.
Okay,
you know?
I took it that he was there to meet up with Picard, and when
he was.
And when these kids all went up hero worshipping Jean-Luc, he sat back, and then after hearing that statement from Picard, he was going, well, if he doesn't want kids, I'm not going to be his kid, and left, basically. So,
well, it wasn't that he did. I mean, that's the thing, because it's all off the back of, you know, where he's saying kind of the final bit of sage advice from Picard, where it's like, you know, the crew are a part of you, they lift you up, help you to do things you can't do on your own. You know, in that sense, he then, you know, he says, and Starfleet was the only family he ever needed. But that's, again, I think it comes back to the fact he had no idea his son was there, you know, at all. And this feels like, you know, at that moment, knowing how his life has gone, that's what he would say. It's to the conversation that him and Beverly had in the earlier episode about, well, I couldn't make the choice with the information. So this is all out of context. And I do feel Jack should ultimately have gone, well, did you mean that?
Yeah.
You know, even if it was anonymously, without having to say, well, I'm your son.
It would feel a little bit weird if somebody in the bar shouted over to him going, did you mean that? but after asking him the question in the first place.
Go over and say, oh, I was hearing what you were saying. You know, did you really? Because effectively all the cadets came over and said, oi, let your fish and chips go cold. I'm going to talk.
Which was the worst.
I know.
The worst of that. I'd be like, all right, lads, I'll chat to you. Just like, you don't, I don't want a soggy fish here.
I know. Give me a moment. I'm eating.
But there is also, to add to the point, there is also that Jack's about 18 here. It's 5 years ago. Jack's about 23, roughly, in the show. I know he's played a little older. The reason why Beverly didn't tell him about Picard when he was younger was because, and took him away, was because Picard always put Starfleet first, right? So this is what he's been hearing for many years. Before going out to seek Jean-Luc at this moment, he's heard that Jean-Luc will always put Starfleet ahead of anything else. That if he's asked to go run across the galaxy, he does it. We saw that at the start of this season. He's still doing it all the time. So he now has a real example in the real world of Jean-Luc Picard standing in front of people going, Starfleet is my family. That's the only family I ever needed. So while it is out of context, it matches the only context Jack has about Jean-Luc Picard. So that's probably why he takes it much harsher than just overhearing something or just somebody else reiterating something. He's just heard something that confirmed the worst possible version of Picard that he believes he is, that he's someone that will always put Starfleet ahead of family. So, and he's kind of confirmed it right there. So yeah, a little heartbreaking scene, but at least they're together in real time.
But he doesn't say he puts Starfleet over family.
I know.
He says it's the only family he ever needed.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
But I still think, it's a little unfair ultimately on Jean-Luc.
In hindsight, of course. Yeah. And we know Jean-Luc, so we know he didn't mean to say that if he was asked that directly by his son. Do you want to know me, your 18-year-old son that you didn't know about before now? I'm sure Jean-Luc wouldn't have said, no, Starfleet's the only family I want. Get out, boy.
Exactly.
He never would have said that, of course, but we know him. Jack didn't know him at this point.
Yeah.
So at least they're together now. At least they can repair that relationship. But it must be a heartbreaking moment for Picard to realize that this is the only time his son.
I like the fact that there is the kind of realization on Picard that he remembers him from that moment, or the strong suggestion of that happening anyway. And so that's kind of interesting. It's also after Shaw's outburst, you do see Jack telling him to,
back off
effectively. That's enough. Understanding, the complexity of what Jean-Luc went through as much as the rest of all those ships at the battle. So, there are little pulses, dare I say it, of things beginning to sort of mesh these two together, you know?
Yeah.
The one question I had, though, was maybe it's just because he looked younger, but the moment of Jack in the mirror, was that from that time 5 years ago, or was that there and then aboard the Titan?
I took it as being above the Titan.
Okay.
Titan, yeah.
It's just, I think,
Above
because
the
he
Titan?
looked a lot younger in that moment, and I suddenly was
That's just
like,
because he had his top off. And
I
you
guess
weren't looking
so.
at his face.
He had the Star Trek pecs, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess, rather than the Marvel abs.
For me, Picard in this one, Picard falls into the PR line for Starfleet Academy.
Yeah,
which is
exactly.
it's the army. It's like the only family you'll need is the army, Starfleet. Like you fall into that line when you're speaking to cadets. Like you would do that.
Yeah.
So I fully get
Exactly
Picard what he does here.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I think he's speaking to the cadets. It's a line to get them. It's the camaraderie, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. The only additional bit, I had two questions, and then we'll kind of close up because like these could also be notes. Actually, one is how does Picard remember that conversation and seeing Jack? Because I'm like, I'm not Picard's age. I wouldn't, if you came to me with, I asked a question 5 years ago to you, just in the middle of a bar on a Wednesday afternoon, not a special day. Do you remember? I'd be like, no. Like, I don't even know what I had for breakfast last week. Come on.
I guess because now he's a synthetic, maybe
I'm hoping that's
maybe
it.
the pulse also affected him, and he suddenly got a charge of megabytes.
He has mega memory. I remember what I did this day, like when I was 16.
Instant recall.
Okay.
You know,
There you go. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, other than the whole notion of like, oh, okay, you look familiar, you know, or that deja vu moment, maybe.
Maybe.
But yeah, I would be the same.
That was funny.
Yeah.
Final question. On Jack, I really hope he's not a fake son.
Right.
They've played that card before. We discussed this in the first two episodes.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I'm hoping it's something more, way more, because I get it. There's only so many stories you can tell, but like they've literally done that story in Star Trek.
Yeah.
Where Picard had a fake son and he thinks it's his son and starts to bond with him, and then it turns out it's not his son.
No, I think it makes sense that this is his real son now. But I really do want to know what it is about Jack that the changelings want. There's something there. There has to be something about him that's different and unusual.
Yeah.
I don't think
he sees things
and hears things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think he's a changeling. I don't think they've replaced Jack with a changeling or something like that. But because I feel like the arcs of Picard have been pretty specific to the Picard character. The first season, the letting go of Data, him dying and coming and coming back and getting rid of that brain tumor effectively that could kill him at any day. Season 2 was all about letting go of the trauma he'd suffered as a child. And season 3 here seems to be about him accepting that fatherhood, effectively, accepting the actual family that he could have had. So I think that's hopefully where we end the season is him riding off into the sunset on a spaceship with his son.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's part of me where it's just niggling that Picard has to sacrifice himself here from this season so far.
Yeah, something like that. Him sacrifice himself for his son. That's also a similar arc. I know it's not as happy an ending, but it is a similar type of arc. But I think it's going to play into the fact that he now has a son, something he didn't have at any stage previously in the history of Picard. So, good stuff. Yeah, good questions, Chris. I'm sure we'll fill those out as the season goes on. Any other notes, any other points about the episode that you want to talk about?
None from me.
I just want to mention, because we had said last week, Worf calling out René Auberjonois as Odo and him being such a great man. I did like in this episode where we had the conversation between Shaw and Seven, where he was talking about the receptacle that holds the changelings. You can see a photograph of René Auberjonois as Odo there. So Odo from DS9 making a little cameo in this season, which is quite nice.
Can I ask you a really quick question?
Of course.
As a follow-up? Where are we with the changelings? Like, at the end of DS9, changelings are good? Like, they just a neutral entity. And where was the end of the Dominion War? What, like, where are, like, is it just two different factions of the Changelings? I know I missed last week's episode. You probably discussed this. But for those in the back.
I don't really want to go through, or I won't go through the full ending because it was a massive ending with loads of different threads that were tied up from a 7-season show in the last couple of episodes. So I'd highly recommend going out and watching all of DS9. It's the best series of Star Trek. But basically, the leader of the Changelings was arrested and taken away. The rest of the Changelings all went back and into the Great Link, and Odo joined them to try and help them and stop them from attacking other people. They came to an agreement that would be the end of the war, effectively. So, so he went and joined them. Basically, what we heard in discussions in these episodes in the last couple of weeks is that this Changeling faction are a breakaway group from that group who don't agree with the settlement that happened at the end of the Dominion War. So this group isn't, or at least has split away from the rest of the Changelings. Okay, there you go. That's it. Thank you. The best I can offer right now. But I know I want to go and watch Deep Space Nine again, especially as these episodes go on and we get more and more connections to Deep Space Nine. Great memories watching that show as well.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's it for points and notes then. Overall, what did you guys think of Star Trek Picard Season 3, Episode 4, No-Win Scenario? Chris?
I loved it. This is old school Star Trek Next Generation for me. That's all I really need to say for it. Like, it's literally a classic episode. You've got the aliens, you've got the unwinnable situation, you've got them coming together, you've got all of it. So, quick and dirty, I loved this episode. It was just fun. One of the best episode Picards to date.
Excellent stuff. How about yourself, John?
Yep, I'm the same. Absolutely love this. I'd give it 5 hyperdrive fried space calamari out of 5.
Nice.
Bit of salt and pepper.
With a bit of lemon.
Yeah, a bit of lemon, bit of salt. Absolutely. Yum. Oh.
We are clearly getting hungrier as the episode goes.
Exactly. I really loved this. I just loved how I didn't really mention it previously. I loved how they resolved Riker and Picard's sort of big bust up as well. I just thought that was kind of tastefully done in a sense, you know.
Yeah.
I'm just enjoying Captain Shaw beyond belief. You know, where you've got the beep on the door and he's like, don't open. And it opens, as 7 of 9 comes in. You know, can I speak officially? No. Can I speak unofficially? No. I mean, he's just really, really good.
Great. Yeah.
I love the relationship with 7 of 9 because 7 of 9 is just so precise, you know, so disciplined because of the whole Borg element as well.
Yeah.
You know, and this
discipline, but she does like to go against orders from her commanding officers.
But, so I like how those two pair up really good.
Yeah.
The whole just, you know, we got engaged, we got the space creatures, we got the no win, but actually a win scenario. It was just really, really good. We got, Captain Vadic's comeuppance and, creepy communication technology. Can you imagine? People really wouldn't, get very big, phone bills if that was, what happened if you needed to talk to someone.
I certainly wouldn't be making very many phone calls, but to cut off my own arm.
Nose. I've got to take my nose off now.
To spite me face.
You know? I really enjoyed that. And then the intrigue with Jack at the end, you know, hearing the voices. And what is that, you know? I really enjoyed this. So many touch points back to fantastic episodes of Star Trek, but they felt right. They didn't feel shoehorned. So it was really good. So 5 hyperdrive fried space calamari with salt and pepper and a bit of lemon out of 5. Yum, yum.
All right.
Derek, what about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely love this episode. The only other thing that I think we hadn't talked about in the episode and hadn't touched on in the episode is the performance of Jonathan Frakes himself throughout the episode of Riker. In the episode, I thought he was absolutely fantastic. Another great moment between himself and Picard, as you say, as he forgives Jean-Luc and apologizes to him for not taking his advice earlier. Thought that was a fantastic scene. But I also think that quiet moment when he's resigned to the fact that he's going to die and not going to be able to go back to see Deanna Troi again. He'd had the conversation with Picard, telling him about the loss of his son, how much that affected him, the worst moment in his life. And then he has to try and record a final farewell message to Deanna Troi. I thought those two moments were absolutely brilliant from Jonathan Frakes. Really, really good. And we didn't get to talk about them because there were so many other points to talk about in the episode, which is a stuffed, packed, full episode of Picard when there's this many great things to talk about. So loved it. Really, really good.
Absolutely. Mantra is, in Frakes we trust.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
For sure.
Good stuff. Let's get on to some feedback from our wonderful fellow Trekkies.
Yes.
First up, we got an email in from one of our listeners over on feedback at tvpodcastindustries.com. They say, "Hi, enjoying the Picard podcast. Thanks for sharing your thoughts and knowledge with us. I think you missed an important line from episode 3. Will Riker says to Jack, 'I have a daughter and I had a son.' He later tells Picard to make the most of any time with children. As a grieving parent who recently lost a son, this line carried great depth. Jonathan Frakes' acting as he talks to Picard in the moment was excellent, and the almost dismissal of that moment by Picard showed the character's own inner turmoil as he discovered he had a son, but at that moment a son who didn't acknowledge or want to know him. Patrick Stewart's acting was also exceptional in this moment. It would take some exceptionally strong narrative decisions to keep father and son estranged. Hollywood rarely, if ever, has the courage to show grief and loss in realistic ways. It will find the happier ending. Keep up the good work and congratulations on a great show." Thanks so much for your feedback. Thanks so much for your email. Yeah, it was really well handled, and I think even more so in this episode. I know we missed out on this specific line in that discussion last week between Picard and Will Riker, but I think it led into an even further examination of grief, which they don't traditionally do, exactly as you say.
Well, that's it. And but even where you have Riker saying, about how Deanna feels everything and she couldn't cope, that I felt nothing, that nothing was coming off me, it was just really, really good for sure. Yeah.
And it's good that even at the very end where Riker is talking to Diana and he says he's going to try, and it's that working on the grief, working no longer to block everything and be still, but more to accept his emotions and move beyond that part. Yeah. It's an interesting kind of digest of, or versioning of grief, as you said, or as our kind of feedback says. I wonder if they'll touch on it more, because we do know Diana will be in this season more as well. So maybe in the next episode, next episode.
Yeah, I really can't wait to see Diana.
I hope so. She's only been on a view screen now. Three times, once in flashback and then this episode. So I hope we're actually going to see her in live action. It would be terrible if she got just the Oldley cameos on a screen and every other member of cast comes on board the Titan. It'd be terrible, wouldn't it?
No, I think there was a screenshot. There was a still of her in the flesh, not in this vid screen.
Yeah, I hope so.
I hope so.
I know she's had a few episodes of Picard so far, but it'd be great since everybody else is coming back to have a moment with her.
Definitely.
Great stuff. Thanks so much for your feedback. Very kind of you to send in an email to us.
Yeah, absolutely. On Facebook for last week's episode, Donald Dennis says, Picard is pretty good, but it doesn't seem to be quite up to where Strange New Worlds is, or even Lower Decks. Seriously, Lower Decks has been a breath of fresh air. It's a good nostalgia fix, and the Worf combat scene was both amazing and 20 years too late. One thing that bothers me about most sci-fi shows, this included, is just how bad the tactics are. I really expected that by the second or third time the Shrike used the wormhole weapon, the Federation folks would have figured that they needed to time their attacks and movements with the wormhole tech in mind. A science officer should have reported, it takes X seconds to recharge, or something like that. Launch a torpedo or two, but then launch the rest at the Shrike after it has already opened up one wormhole, or unleash a full barrage of everything right after they try to flee the Shrike and get teleported back in front of it. Or, and I know this never happens in Star Trek, remove the saucer section and do something fancy with it. Still, I'm enjoying Picard overall, even though most of it seems to be callbacks and Easter eggs. Yeah, thanks so much, Donald, for the feedback. I think you should be heading off to the US Armed Forces now, actually.
I think Don's basically putting in his proposal to be in Starfleet. Those are great tactics.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Good stuff. Or at least a science officer,
yes.
I guess,
Yeah.
where he could like say, what are you doing, lads?
Tactical officer, John.
You know?
Yeah.
X seconds, yeah.
Yeah.
Got a saucer as well.
Well, that's absolutely what I love. I think everybody wants the saucer section to be removed. I think when it was first said that that's something that could be done on all of these ships, all the fans are like, please remove it. Let's see what it looks like. And it does happen on occasion in the show. It's very, very rare that it happens. I think it's also happened in one of the movies before as well, but very, very rare that you see the saucer section removed. It was on the Next Generation episode around Wolf 359 where they do separate the saucer section and put it back on, but the only way you know is that the light color has changed. They don't show it from the outside, which I think is quite funny. I love that.
I loved it when it split up and then they used both of them to attack at one of the seasons.
Yeah.
That was like, yes!
Yes, come on, finally.
Someone else go into the other little mini bridge and you keep this main bridge and we'll fire together.
Exactly.
That was great.
Yeah, and it's good to hear that you're enjoying the show, sort of overall, as well. Good stuff. Thanks, Donald.
Yes, thanks, Donald. Next up, we have some feedback from Dr. Bob Phillips, who had this to say. 0 out of 5 cardiac restarting certificates for this one. Well, one bit. It's called a defibrillator because it stops fibrillation. Fibrillation being the wibbling of the electrical activity of the heart. The flatline is non-existent activity. Mm-hmm. It can't be shocked back. Plus, if oxygen is needed, then Jack needed gas exchange, not jumpy shock treatment. I mean, honestly, is this all invented or what?
Love it.
Ignoring that, though, I did like the crumbling of the legend and the evolution of our understanding of Jean-Luc and Lost Parenthood. Was everyone else counting pink elephants from the point Will said go to Jean-Luc Picard appearing at the bedside?
Was it 17? Was it 17 seconds, do you think?
Oh, maybe.
I know. I have to say, I always do that when the Death Star in Star Wars Episode 4, and you've got the countdown to them effectively blowing up the Rebel base, and it's like, I think the Death Star would have done it. Yes.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Dramatic tension, though, John.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. But as a kid, I was like going, oh no, they would have died.
Dr. Bob went on to say, I also very much appreciate the writer pointing out the immediate scans of blunt abdominal trauma can be wrong. This is something there's a hardcore of trauma doctors who keep on reminding folks about, as immediately ultrasounds can give the wrong answer. Well, there you have everything and all your doctor and scientific news from Dr. Bob Phillips for this episode. Thank you very much, Dr.
Absolutely.
Bob.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Always good. There was a moment in this week's Last of Us episode that I'd love if Dr. Bob was watching, because I'm still not too sure if a particular character would be alive given the medical treatment they received. There we go. That's all I'll say.
Well, there we go. I do also, it is my new favourite term for the wibbling of the electrical activity of the heart.
Love it. Love it.
Wibble. I wonder if you were underpants on your head and 2 pencils up your nose for wibbling.
Wow.
Of the electrical activity of the heart.
What a reference.
Deep cut
Wibble.
Blackadder reference for all of the Blackadder fans out there. Excellent. I wonder, does it say that on the back of the box, though? This is a defibrillator. It's for wibbling the electrical activity of the heart.
That'd be hilarious.
It's for wibbling only, not wobbling.
Exactly.
If you're
Not wobbling.
wobbling, you need a fibrillary.
Yeah. Or some jelly.
Or talk to your local
Put a
doctor.
plate of jelly.
Yeah. Always talk to your doctor if you're having a wibbling or wobbling.
Absolutely.
Smash here for emergency jelly.
Good stuff. Thanks, Dr. Bob.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Bob.
Joe Herbert says, we enjoyed this episode more than the first 2, but I guess I'm going to have to believe that somehow birth control for men and women in the 24th century is no better than what we have today. And I still don't buy Beverly not telling Picard he has a son. She was so worried about his safety that once he's maybe an older teen, she's taking him on dangerous missions outside Federation space such that he has multiple bounties on his head by now.
Absolutely.
Good points, Joe. Good
Yeah,
points.
very good points, Joe, indeed.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Joe.
And on this week's episode, we have some feedback in on episode 4. We got a message from Trevor Green who says, that's some damn good Trek. Easily the best episode of the series so far.
Yeah, totally agree, Trevor. Good stuff. Heather Wallace also says, what a great way of working in the kind of old school encountering unknown species story that was typical of Next Gen's stand-alone episodes into a series that has an overarching narrative. Mm-hmm. The jellyfish space babies were a bit corny, but still rather cute. Although, as an Australian, I know to give all jellyfish a respectful distance. I'm glad I was wrong about Will being a changeling. It was much more powerful to see him at odds with Jean-Luc Picard as himself. Although I'm glad it was resolved quickly this week. Definitely agree with that. Yeah. Heather says, really interesting that just as Jack realized the benefit of working with a team, Jean-Luc realized his own Starfleet family is the only family I need. Spiel was what made his own son choose not to know him. Is Vadik a changeling? Why would she need to cut off her hand to create talking goo? When your baddie is really, really scared of someone, the tension just ratchets up. Also, thanks showrunners for answering my question. Apparently, it is a mark of respect to give your late husband's name to the kids you had in secret with his best friend. Last thoughts. Shaw is an absolute standout character. Give him his own show.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely. In fact, you could almost see Shaw doing live action Lower Decks in some respects. Just great comedy.
I could see that.
Timing.
I could see him crossing over with Lower Decks, see him appearing on that,
definitely.
on that show in some way.
But yeah, no, thanks, Heather, for the feedback. Certainly, totally agree. Really glad that the Jean-Luc and Will Riker argument was resolved quickly, but I'm glad it was there because I think it just adds that dimension. Because I mean, it felt really brutal. I mean, maybe I can't remember like Jean-Luc Picard can 5 years ago. I can't remember at least over 20 years ago now as to the type of arguments that they would have gotten into. But this felt really raw and almost fatal a bit to their relationship. So I'm glad it got resolved quickly as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks, Heather. For me, the mark of respect is always naming your current son after your ex.
Oh,
come on.
Yeah.
It's just, it's the ultimate kind of like F you. We'll call it that. Like, it's just like, you peed me off. I'm gonna name my son after you.
Well, at least Jean-Luc said he would have also named it after Jack.
He would have.
Yeah, so that makes sense.
And I guess for Vadik, I guess that's just what changelings do in order to have a long distance phone call with their leader. I guess, or unless they need part of the goo that is connected to the Great Link, or it's something to do with that. I don't know, but looks really, really painful to have a long distance call, to be honest.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does. And yes, I'm here for the Shaw 7 kind of buddy cop show where they have their own kind of the captain and first officer. That's a good one. Like, and then they end up falling in love and it's all this thing. It's going to be great.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's the way. When you have two completely, like, characters, a male and a female, that are always at each other's throats and don't are complete opposite.
What about Raffi? She's still in a relationship with Raffi Mussaker.
Well, we don't know that. We don't know that she is or isn't.
Well, yeah, but there's still a possibility, I guess. Well, yes. I mean, quite frankly, when you said Shaw 7, I just thought it was like Saw 7, but just in space. It was going to be kind of in a holodeck, trapped in a holodeck. You know, how do I get out of this with a psycho mannequin thing going after you?
That would be cool. Heather, thank you so much. We have another piece of feedback from Victor Von Doon, who had this to say: this season seems to get better with every episode. Todd Stashwick nearly stole the episode. I initially thought Shaw's confrontation with Picard in the bar was bad form, but reminded they were all facing death and he had some things to get off his chest.
Yeah.
I like his collaboration with Seven to catch the changeling. Perhaps Seven should have put his pot in a bag, but she made good on her second shot at him. Is Vadik actually sharing her body with a changeling? Creepy. The changeling's natural form was a lot more organic and scarier than presented in DS9. Riker's revenge on the Shriek was amusing and fitting of his personality. I am eager to learn why Jack is so important to the Changeling and see more of Raffi and Worf in action and meet their handler. The reference to Farpoint was a nice touch. I am putting this episode on the ballot for best episode.
Good stuff.
Love it, Victor.
Yeah, thanks, Victor. And yeah, honestly, the throwing an asteroid back at the Shriek was just perfect.
Yeah.
Karma. Kismet.
It's very cool.
And Victor, I like what you've said there. Is Vadik actually sharing her body with a changeling rather than being a changeling, which is basically what I was thinking. So I think that's a nice little twist that she could be sharing her body, and that's how she gets to talk to him. So yeah, that's really good stuff. And yeah, it would be very creepy. So it's not actually like a long distance call at all. It's like she is being controlled by the big bad.
And if Vadik is sharing her body with a changeling, could Jack be sharing his body with a changeling that they want back?
Especially with that ending. That's what I mean. It was like links.
Yeah.
Just didn't get I didn't think of the sharing the body, sort of body snatcher type approach to it. So yeah, really kind of like that theory, Victor.
This is why we love feedback.
Yes.
Excellent stuff. We have one final piece of feedback. We have a voicemail in from Matt Murdoch, who gives us thoughts on the music for Chapter 4 of Star Trek Picard Season 3.
Hi all, Matt here again. Really enjoyed Part 4 this time around. And I wanted to revisit the theme that I talked about before. We heard it a lot this episode, and I'm still not exactly sure what it means exactly in terms of what it represents. Maybe it doesn't represent anything other than the show, but it was used really well in this particular episode. From the moment after Picard says engage, you hear it littered throughout that entire musical sequence where they're trying to ride the wave to get out, all the way through to witnessing the birth and all of these new beings that have been brought forth into the universe. And I don't want to pinpoint them all out or break them down because I already kind of talked about how it works. But it was used in different kinds of harmonic contexts that those harmonies give them different types of emotions. But this basic motif appeared a lot. Love that it's being used this way. It's very versatile kind of motif because of its melodic shape. It can be put over several different types of chords to create different kinds of emotions depending on what note of the chord that the motif is actually starting on. But the other thing that I wanted to bring up is what occurs just before Picard says engaged. And that was the way that Stephen Barton used the old main theme and placed chords that kind of walked up, which made it great for right after Riker told Picard to take the con. It was a nice way to really use that main theme. It's actually played between two different sets of instruments, the French horns and the trumpets. It's like the French horns play it first, the trumpets play it second. But underneath, there's also low brass playing these chords that walk up the scale. And what that does is it adds power to it. It adds momentumness. Is that a word? To it. And I just loved it. It's really hard to replicate on a piano with just 10 fingers because so many instruments are doing so many different things. And some notes are being held out while that same note is being played, which is really hard to duplicate as well. But it sounds like this. It really just uses a simple diatonic scale, just walking up, but that helps it build to a point where it's starting to feel more important. It's not just the melody on its own. It's not a solo mission. It's everybody getting behind Picard. And I loved that. So that was one of the things that I really loved. And like I said, I love the use of that motif that I still don't know if it represents anything or not, but just go back from the time that Picard says engage and see how many times you can count that you hear that motif being used. Sometimes it resolves in different places. You hear that main motive, but sometimes the note that's after is different. And that also depends on the emotional and the harmonic context. It's really cleverly used. I know I counted at least 5. Anyway, that's all I got, guys. Really enjoyed the episode. Take care.
Thanks so much, as always, for your thoughts, Matt. That's some fascinating thoughts.
Yeah, thanks so much, Matt. Really enjoyed, as always, your feedback and just how, these themes that we hear are so beloved, and maybe that's the only, that's the only thing that it means here. It is the nostalgic element, but how that can be changed and brought into these different kind of situations by, as you say, doing those diatomic scales and sort of layering in, to build and give it that momentum. Mm-hmm. So I really, really interesting stuff as always, Matt. And thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I'll actually be completely honest. I didn't even notice it. I was too kind of transfixed on them riding the wave, as you say, and as it grew. So I'm going to have to go back and watch this one, but it's good. Thank you for picking these things out and actually kind of telling us and the fellow Trekkies and Trekkers about it, because again, I did notice and now I'm like, oh, cool. What else have they done? I'm going to go back and check.
All about the visuals, Chris. You were just caught by the beautiful lighting.
I am. Yeah. That's what happens all the time.
I love it. We got a last bit of feedback in from Gail Cleary just before we put out the podcast, so I've got to read through it now. Gail says, "Hi, gentlemen. First off, congratulations on your 750th episode. I truly enjoy your podcast. You're smart, insightful, funny, and respectful of all the properties you cover. You never fail to help me appreciate what I've just watched even more." Thanks, Gail.
Yeah, thanks, Gail.
That's really nice of you.
Yeah, really nice.
Gail continues saying, "I have been loving your coverage of Picard. I just finished watching No Win Scenario, and this is the show I've been waiting 3 seasons for. I'm loving how much Picard has returned to cinematic form and how it now feels like we are finally in the Next Generation universe again. I am grateful that they're finally able to give us a show the fans have been wanting now that the pandemic has stopped affecting production. As much as I'm loving this season, it is also bittersweet for me. I feel like I'm watching Patrick Stewart pour his heart into giving us one final piece of truly great work to remember him by, and now I'm crying. I loved how much this episode focused on remembrance and valuing relationships from our past. I know that you will do an excellent job talking about the episode, and I wonder if it would be okay for me to relate to you an extremely important story to me about Patrick Stewart from my past."
Absolutely.
Of course, absolutely. Love hearing this kind of feedback. I'm 56. One of my earliest memories is watching Captain Kirk and Spock on a fuzzy black and white TV. I started watching it when I was 5 years old, and it went into reruns on one of the 3 channels we got in Canada back in the day. I was hooked, I say. It sparked in me a lifelong love of science fiction and optimism about the goodness of people who work to create better futures for us all. But even as a little girl, I found a lot of the original Star Trek hokey. Then The Next Generation came out. I was a dirt poor student who had to borrow loans and work a full-time job while going to university. But when that show came out, I used my grocery money to get a TV and allowed myself 1 hour per week of TV watching to watch every episode. That show blew my mind and made me so happy. Picard was my captain, and so he remained for 35 years. In 1991, I went to visit Stanley Park in Vancouver, which in my opinion is the most beautiful park in the world. Despite the many, many gorgeous things in that park, the one that riveted me was the black squirrels in the trees. I hadn't seen a black squirrel in years since I was a child in Montreal and had to play with them. I ran to a vendor and bought the most expensive bag of peanuts and popcorn I had ever purchased in my life. Then I picked a spot where I could see squirrels and started calling them. Little 5'1" me stood there calling squirrels at the top of my piercing soprano voice until a veritable herd of them rushed out of the trees and came bounding across the grass to me. I dropped to my knees and started handing out treats. I would occasionally start calling again to coax the most reluctant ones out of their safe spaces. Suddenly I heard a quiet cough behind me. That voice said, "Excuse me, I beg your pardon. I've been watching you for a while and I decided that I simply had to meet the young lady with the power to call the very squirrels out of the trees." I turned my head and Patrick Stewart was standing over my shoulder. My brain melted. He asked me if I thought I could teach him how to do that. I laughed. I gave him a crash course in Squirrel 101, and soon he was handing out peanuts too. We talked for a while. He asked about me and then told me that he was visiting a friend who lived across from the park. I assumed he meant Leonard Nimoy, but didn't ask. I had to stamp down at a crazy urge to get him to take me to meet his friend. For fangirl me, Talking to both of them would have been like dying and going to heaven. Instead, I concentrated on our talk. Mr. Stewart told me how much he loved coming to Canada, how friendly and respectful the people are, and how he always felt completely safe and at home when visiting us. To this day, this chance meeting in a park has been one of the highlights of my life. It's one of my happiest memories. Mr. Stewart is as nice and as delightful as I ever imagined he could be. But this was in the days before internet, and I never had the chance to connect later and tell him how much joy he brought to me in that small encounter. I still laugh at him calling me the Snow White of the North and think of him daily when I feed the menagerie of wild animals who come seeking snacks on my back patio. Thank you, Mr. Stewart. You have brought me so much happiness over the years. I am thankful for the wonderful work you've given us. Thank you for this last outing with our beloved captain. Make it so, Gail.
Excellent stuff, Gail. Yeah, great story.
That's lovely.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine he's really just so nice, to be honest.
Yeah, seems like a really genuine, down-to-earth kind of guy, you know. And yeah, you're absolutely right. The passion that he has for the work that he does comes through in everything he does. So meeting him in real life and seeing what he's really like as well is great. That's really cool. What a cool story to have.
Yeah, fantastic stuff.
It's such
Gail.
a beautiful place as well. I know we have been to Vancouver. Myself and John visited there a few years ago and only spent about a week there. And unfortunately, Vancouver had so much in it that we couldn't cover everything. We couldn't see everything there. But
we were in Whistler and Edmonton and so on
as well. So, the rest of our holiday, but we did spend about a week in Vancouver itself. But I would say, having looked at some photographs of that park, of Stanley Park, it looks like a gorgeous place. So maybe the next time we're in Vancouver, John, we'll get out there.
I think we were kind of in it. I think because we went along the waterfront there and then briefly into the park.
Yeah.
But it was winter, so it was quite cold.
It was. Thank you so much again, Gail, for sharing that story. That's really kind of you to think of us. And I'm glad you're enjoying our podcast about Picard. We feel the same way. I know TNG is a massive show in all three of our pasts. So it's great to see them kind of coming back and telling a great story in that universe with so many characters from the Next Generation as well. So really loving this and this episode, particularly a great episode.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Gail, and thanks for your story. It's great sharing those memories with everyone.
Absolutely. Excellent stuff. Thanks so much for your feedback. If you want to get in contact with us, of course, you can send emails to us at feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com or pop over to our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/tvpodcastindustries. And a little later in our episode this time, we do have to take a trip to 10 Forward, John.
We certainly do. To get absolutely sloshed as the ship crumbles, or should I say the pub crumbles around us. In our moment of need, the lights have a battery that allow them to still work. Excellent stuff.
Do you know, I have to say, I did love that. I love the idea that when the ship crashes, you can go onto the holodeck. It's completely separated. You can't do anything about it. Everybody can just crowd on board, have a last moment wherever they want to spend their last moment. What a cool idea. And apparently
it's a bar.
Well, exactly. It doesn't have to be. It can be whatever you want it to be. But apparently that is true to Star Trek. That is something that they had in Voyager, that the holodeck is powered by something that can't be used by the systems at all. It's incompatible power system. So it is completely standalone. So well done for reusing that for this moment.
Definitely.
Hard light energy.
Kind of.
Hey, let me get my Red Dwarf quote in.
I thought it might be Red Dwarf rather than Star Trek, yes.
But fellow quizzers, fellow Trekkies, welcome to the 10 Forward Pub Quiz in your hour of need. Question 4 from episode 4. What cheap bottle of whiskey do Picard and Jack share?
Yes, happy St. Patrick's Day for next week, everybody.
Exactly. It's slightly insulting, but nonetheless.
But it's fine.
We thought we would ask it.
Absolutely. John, do you want to ask it one more time?
What cheap bottle of whiskey do Picard and Jack share? And I do hasten to add, it's what they call a cheap bottle of whiskey.
100%. Yes, we'd be kicked out if we called it that.
Yes.
But why? Ooh, that's too many hints.
It is. But that is the 4th question in our 10 Forward Pub Quiz. 6 more questions to go. At the end of the season, pop in your email with all the answers to those 10 questions, and you could be in with a chance of getting your hands on some Star Trek Picard goodies. You can email us with those answers to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com, of course. Thanks so much for joining us. We will be back next week with the 5th episode of Star Trek Picard. Imposter.
Ooh.
Or will we be back, or will someone else be back?
Exactly.
Well, exactly.
Maybe the real versions of you two will be back next week.
Maybe.
But thanks so much. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks so much, guys. We'll speak to you again next week. Or will we?
Yes, goodbye, fellow Trekkies and Trekkers, and thank you for joining us on this space adventure with Star Trek Picard. As always, can't wait to speak and chat to you about the next episode, but in the meantime, keep watching, keep listening, and keep trekking.
Find me.
I'm hungry for calamari.
I need calamari. Make sure it's got lemon and salt on it.
And a bit of pepper.
And some cheap whiskey.
Love it. Right.